right. Hello, Idiots on Parade, the Too Ugly for TV podcast. Bonus podcast. We're filming. That's how you know it's a bonus podcast. Unless you're listening to the audio version, then you have no idea we're filming. Hi, Barrett.
Hey, how are you, sir?
I am well. How are you?
I can't complain. And if I did, it would change so little.
Yes. We are recording on Juneteenth, Friday, the 19th, a holiday that everybody just discovered thanks to Donald Trump. Did you hear that?
No, what happened?
Well, I mean, you know the whole story, right? He had a big rally set for today, but then there were complaints because it's not only Juneteenth, but it was set in Tulsa, the site of the massacre. We discussed the massacre in passing a while ago. So he pushed it to tomorrow. But then yesterday or today, this morning, he said nobody even heard of Juneteenth until I made it famous, something like that. That by putting his rally on Juneteenth is the only reason people have ever heard of it. So he's taking credit for it. So you're welcome, African Americans. You are welcome.
Yet again, we have something to thank Trump for.
Yes, but I don't want to talk about that. We talked earlier today for half a second, saying, "Hey, what should we talk about tonight?" And we agreed that cancel culture would be an interesting thing to talk about. Did we not?
We did.
All right.
So,
well, that being go ahead.
I was going to say, why don't you start?
Okay. I wanted to talk about it because I have someone on my friends list who shared something from someone on his friends list. So it was a screenshot of a status update. And the full story, just to tell it, is he said he contacted the person and said, "Hey, can I share your status update?" And this woman was excited. She's like, "Yes, share. Let's get it out there." And he's like, "Okay, because you're a pretty vile person. And the fact that you're posting this, I need to show the world what we're trying to fight as far as racism goes." Okay. So she unfriended him. And then he posted the screenshot of her status. And her status was one of those horrible white people arguments that there is a difference between black people and, say it for me,
niggers.
Yes. And we can talk about that later too, because I'd like to talk about that. So the status was that argument, which we've all heard that there is a supposed difference. And when I saw it, so the cancel culture, when I saw it, I wanted to share it. I'm like, wow, this woman is stupid and horrible, and good for him for sharing it. That was my first response. Then I noticed, and this is where it gets dicey, so we can talk this all through. I noticed her status was friends only. She hadn't made it public, so the only reason he could see it is because he was on her friends list. And it gets in, like, I don't know where to go from here. I don't want to protect people like this. I think they should be outed. That's why I like it when someone flies the Confederate flag. It's like, oh yes, now I know everything about you. You've got that symbol hanging up of who you are. But at the same time, I think about Central Park Karen and her run-in with the bird watcher. And even he said, he's done interviews since that happened and said, I don't think she deserves to have her life destroyed. She did something horrible. She should be punished for that horrible action. I don't know what it is. Maybe pay a fine for calling the police when there's a non-emergency. But he said, as far as losing her job and losing her dog and being publicly shamed, what does that solve? And do we forgive? And that's the question I ask, is because people can grow and change, but I don't know if cancel culture allows that. I don't know if once someone has changed or said, wow, I mean, there are two ways of going about things. Sometimes people just, the first thing they do is they issue an apology statement. And to me, that's somewhat disingenuous. They say, wow, this was a learning experience for me. It's like, no, you don't learn much within an hour. You're just trying to cover your ass and you want it all to go away. But when someone actually puts in the time and effort, I think by then the mob has forgotten and moving on. So while I see this status update and my first thought is, yeah, get her name out there. Fuck her. She's a horrible person, racist, piece of shit. I also don't want to do things off my baser instincts. My gut response, or not my gut response, you listen to your gut, but my first ego anger response I don't want to be beholden to that. I don't want to be beholden to anger. But then because thoughts get up here, am I just covering for white people? Am I like protecting racists? I don't know. So that's where my head is at. I ultimately did not share it, but where do you jump off from that point and tell me your thoughts there while I turn the air conditioning off so it doesn't make noise behind me and get picked up by the recording.
Nice shirt, by the way. Um,
Thanks.
um, I think it's an interesting proposition. I think that one of the things that has changed, I want to tell a story to tell a story. I think the difference between when you and I were kids and now, things are actually better, right? Like there's less black men in jail, more uh more black men going to college, black women are going to college at a crazy rate, owning businesses. You know what I mean? Like things are better in many ways, right? But one of the things that's changed, I think, or has gotten significantly worse, is the division between what we consider good and what we consider bad. Because I think that at some point, Democrats and Republicans could be friends, you know? Like you could have Republican friends and be a Democrat and even argue about politics and nobody cared. It wasn't that it didn't divide friendships. It didn't even divide. There's plenty of marriages where people who were Democrats and married to Republicans would fight about politics all the time and raise perfectly healthy children, right? Like it was, we thought that good and bad were things that were relative and people could be good and bad simultaneously. And somehow over the last 25 years, we've gotten to a point where it's not good and bad, it's good and evil, you
Yeah.
know? And evil is irredeemable somehow. And so I think that the part of us that wants to believe people are irredeemable would say, fuck her. She can't change. It's impossible for her to change. She's who she is, and that's it. So we just need to let everybody know how much of a piece of shit she is, right? But if we believe people can be redeemed, then maybe what we do is try to have a conversation with her. If this guy was on her friends list, obviously they know each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When he reached out to her, she thought that they were like simpatico. You know what I mean? She thought he was gonna like share it in a good way.
Well, and that's why it was interesting that her status was friends only. Like, I have
Right.
two thoughts. One, she obviously knew this was not for public consumption. As much as she may believe it, there's something in her that goes, I shouldn't make this public because she knows
Yeah,
she's
well,
outvoted.
what she says is they're just not going to understand it the way I mean
Right.
it. So I'm going to. That's how she rationalizes it. Oh, I mean, I don't know her.
There are many
I'm
ways to
making
rationalize. We could
a
go down
wild
many.
assumption.
And then
Exactly.
my other thought is it goes to what I was saying earlier is, like you said, having a conversation, is she irredeemable? How do we redeem someone like that? What can you redeem someone after you've canceled them? Is like once you shame them and beat them down and they lose their job and they're embarrassed, does that make them want to be redeemed, or does that make them just want everything to end? I'll say whatever you want, and then in private they're like, God, fuck all those people. Like, you can be bitter and have a chip on your shoulder because of what
Yeah.
happened.
I mean, again, I suppose it depends on what we think about people, right? Because that woman, Amy Cooper, she could have actually had a legitimate awakening from that experience, right?
Yeah.
Like she could have gone like, holy shit, I do have a certain amount of privilege where my comfort, I think, is more important than maybe it is in real life. You know what I mean, or whatever. I don't know. Well, like she could have just had an awakening that, like, oh right, I have biases that I'm unaware of. You know, maybe I need to examine the ways in which I make assumptions. You know, whatever it is, like she could have had a profound awakening, or She could have just been pissed off. You know what I mean? The thing is that if you take away a person's livelihood because of a mistake, Jesus, man, like, could you imagine how few, like, my God, the things that if in your life, if somebody could film, I bet there was a day, a 24-hour period in which if somebody filmed you and then from 20 years ago, and then they could destroy your life with it. Do you
Oh,
know what I mean?
I think there are things out there that could destroy me that I've done publicly and
In
are
my case,
filmed.
I've done on purpose.
Well, and not just, I mean, again, when you and I did stupid shit when we were younger, it disappeared. The people
Yeah.
that get canceled today, they go for a job interview. It's Googled. You Google a name, and it's like, oh, here's Cooper, and this is what she did, and like, I don't, we're not hiring today, or the position's been. I mean, this can
I
stay
mean,
with you.
here's the thing, and it's funny because it ties
Oh,
into so many things.
could I apologize. Could I interrupt quickly? I
Yeah.
did see one article, and once something like this happens, there are way too many stories coming at you to fully lock onto one. I did read one about her where uh, a lot of people were saying she was not a fun person. Like, she would yell at people, she'd yell at the doorman, or she was very combative. So that could be her nature, and maybe this could be an awakening for her. But then again, that
Yeah.
could just be other bitter people saying, "Yeah, I didn't like her," and so yeah, maybe she needed just
Right.
anger management. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I imagine that if you take away someone's livelihood and their dog, that would make me bitter. That might either give me a profound awakening, like, come to Jesus for real moment, like,
Right?
change your whole life type thing, or you can also go the other way, you know, like you
Yeah.
could, like it is really one of those like crossroads in someone's life that like those kinds of decisions that you make have a profound impact on the rest of your life probably. But
Well, and I do. This just popped into my head, so forgive me for not really knowing where I'm going with it. When it comes to canceling, I think there are different cancel culture. There are different avenues. There are different people. This is a random woman on a guy's friends list who happens to be a piece of shit, or at least I'm judging her as one because of one status.
mhm,
Chris D'Elia, a comedian. Did you hear about what happened to him over the past couple of days?
mhm.
Okay, he's a comedian, and he's on Twitter getting canceled. He's been on some TV shows. He's popular. Turn that fucking thing off 20 minutes ago, and it's deciding to fire up, and it's probably getting picked up on this audio. Anyway, he apparently just likes to get laid, and which could be okay, but apparently he would text girls that were 15 and 16, and he's 30, 32, 35, and so over the past couple of days, suddenly all these women came forward and said, yeah, when I was 16, I have screenshots, I have texts from him. I think there are two different cancel cultures, like a innocent woman in Quincy, Illinois, which is where this was, who's a nobody getting canceled just because she happens to be from that status, a piece of shit, versus a comedian touring and trying to fuck 16-year-olds. Like, there are certain things that can be brought to light, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, I think that exposing a guy who is banging high school kids, I think that's pretty reasonable. I think we can
Yeah.
all agree. I think that that's not a that that's a bipartisan issue.
Yeah.
Like,
And then you take it to Louis C.K., who, well, I don't even want to go down that path because I had a thought, then I'll dismiss it. I was going to say he got in trouble. I misremembered something. I was going to say what he did was inappropriate and wrong as well, but he was more like his peers, like, hey, can I jerk off in front of you? Some of the female comedians said they laughed it off, like, no. Sarah Silverman said, sure. But then she did. She came forward and said, I've watched him jerk off. It's just funny. Um, but then the problem was there were women without power who then his manager came down and said, you fucking tell anybody and you're over in this town. That's where it got out of hand. I
yeah,
mean,
that's ridiculous.
yeah,
That's again, it's an abuse of power.
right.
That's what it is, plain and simple. I mean, you know, I don't remember who said this. I want to say it was Audre Lorde, but I'm not sure. That you can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tools. And what I think people are starting to see is the very same policies that the cancel culture is using are the very same things that minorities have been complaining about since there have been minorities, you know? Like the cop in Burger King who was, or McDonald's, who, did you see this thing? She was
It turns out
fired.
she's not a cop. The police force
Okay.
issued a statement saying she might be a mall security guard because that's not one of us.
Okay. Right.
My egg McMuffin is cold and I don't want to eat it, or whatever it was. That one?
But
Yeah.
you sound so mean when you say it like
I'm a mean person. You know this
but
about me.
but
Oh,
but
we
I
forgot to
mean,
introduce ourselves. That's Antar
it's
Goodwin, African American musician. I'm Nathan Timmel,
yeah.
cracker ass hunky. So
um
anybody still listening, wondering why the fuck who we are,
right.
anyway.
But what's interesting to me is that like every black person I know has gone into restaurants and a mean had mean wait staff or mean whatever and
Yeah.
had to wonder if something happened to their food. You know what I mean? Like it's such a common thought that it's unbelievable, you know? Because the kind of like I hate to use these like God, modern PC terms, microaggressions, right? I hate
I know
that
we're
term.
old. We hate things like that, but it's all
I
the
mean,
rage. Kids are
I
using
mean,
them.
I understand what it means, but it it kind of it denies it again. It somehow assumes that it's conscious. You know, like if you define racism to be something that is personal and conscious and has intent, and it has to have those three things, you know, then you would interpret that as a microaggression. But when I get those things, what they would deem a microaggression, I understand it's just the person's training. Like they just don't know, like literally, right? Like,
More unconscious bias than
right? It's like
aggression.
right, exactly. It's the same mechanism that has trained me to feel a certain way about myself has trained you to feel a certain way about yourself, right? And that's just how it is, right? But that doesn't mean that's not a judgment, you know. Like it's not a judgment in any way, shape, or form. I'll say we're getting sidetracked for a minute because I do want to get back to the master's house, master's tools thing. But like I think that when people talk about all this stuff, white supremacy, racism, sexism, whatever, right? Oh, funny. Here another little story. This is a good one too, right?
We're all about that aggression.
I know exactly. But so I had something racist that happened to me one day, right? One of those things that a black person would perceive to be racist, right? Like I was like, oh, was that racist? Like, I think so, you know. And I was talking to a white friend about it, and the minute it came out, there was immediately like, that wasn't racist. No, that wasn't. There was just immediate explanation. I didn't know what I was talking about, and not everything is racist. It could have been a thousand other things, right? And I was like, okay, whatever. And what happens in those moments is my version of reality is now just denied, right? It's like your reality is no longer real. It's what I say it is, right? That's what happens in those moments, right?
I, I,
Or
I remind me to hold on to a thought of two friends, and
yes.
hopefully we'll get to it. And if we don't, who cares? But
so so this friend and I quickly exited that phone call, and a few minutes later, one of my female friends called me, and she told me something sexist had happened to her. And I was like, nah, you know what you're talking about. Wait, listen, that's not it. And I immediately did the same thing to her that had just happened to me. And at that moment, I went, I'm fucking sexist.
right.
Right. Okay, got it. And it's like, and we know that we are, right? Like, I know that I am, because I know that when I walk into a room and I see a female bass player and she's crushing it, I'm like, there's a part of me that goes, "Arr," you know? And then I go, oh, shut the fuck up. Like, I have to tell myself to stop it. And then I look at her and I go, God damn, she's good, you know? But it takes me, like, I have to get past that part of me that is like angry, you know? Like, and
Where do you
most
think that
men
anger
have
comes
that.
from?
I, I because I've grown up watching television and have seen images of women being subservient to men, and people saying things like, oh, you got beat by a girl, you play like a girl, you
Oh,
do this like a girl, right? Like, I
so
think,
she shouldn't be better than you, or what is the
right.
thought? Okay.
I don't. I'm assuming, whether, if, unless we believe that sexism and patriarchy are somehow a natural occurrence because men are just so much smarter and stronger than women, right? Which is, that's how, that's like how it gets justified. Listen, I don't. I'm not sexist. I just think men are better at doing things than women are.
Right.
It's like, what the fuck does that mean? You know, but like, but every man I know doesn't want to get beat by a woman. And if he does, he makes up excuses for why she got there, how she got there. She must have slept away to the top. It must be because now they don't want men, they only want women. It's like we always have reasons for why they're successful. Same thing I hear I hear white people say it about black people. Oh, well, that's affirmative action. Well, how do you know? How do you know the person just isn't good at that? Because they're clearly doing their job really well right now. So how do you know that that's how they got it? You know, like, and I'm not saying all white people do that because that's absurd, right? But 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 I wish that white people would realize that when they see black people and they have that momentary, that's okay. You're just taught that. You know what I mean? Like most white people don't know black people. They really don't. Most white people don't interact with black people. And the
Well,
only
Lydia, my wife, this is funny and mean. She wanted me to FaceTime you with my kids. So she's like, our kids, I mean, she knows that I know black people, like a couple of friends at the gym, and but she's like, you should FaceTime Barrett so that our kids can see something different. I'm like, it's funny and absurd, but at the same time, I can
right,
see where she's coming from because
right,
I live in Iowa,
right,
and more people
right.
look like me than they look like you here.
Well, but here's the problem, right? You can raise your children to be as liberal as you want, right? But the only interaction with black people they're going to have is through the media. So what they're going to see is hyper athleticism, right? Um,
You're welcome.
right. There
That's
you
how we
go.
present you. Yes.
Right. Right. But you know what I mean? Like, they're going to see hyper athleticism, anger, violence. You know what I mean? They're not going to actually see black people. They're going to consume these images. So even liberal white people who
I think
really
in our
want,
time, yes, but I think times is a changing.
I mean, this may be true. I don't
I
watch a
mean,
lot
look,
of TV these
this is an
days.
example that I've heard several times, and if you disagree with it, tell me. Um, if you show something like you see an ad for a home security system, the criminals, or for Ring doorbell stealing packages, the criminals
Right.
are all white males
Right.
because
It's
they
true.
go through a casting like, we cannot put a black guy as a criminal because that would, and you'd
Right.
think if it was actual equality, there'd be a white guy and a black guy, or just, like, okay, we got
Yeah.
white, but no, it's white guys because they do, whoever's making it, Ring does not want to get, hey, wait, why are you using a black guy as an actor? It's like, okay, just
Yeah.
everybody's white. That's criminal right now.
Yeah. I think that in certain ways that has happened. I think there's a lot of subtle stuff that goes on, like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a movie, but, like, just here's what I'll say to the audience, right? And you as well, right? For the next 2 weeks, when you're watching television, watch the roles that the black people have and watch who has the power and watch who tells who what to do and watch who makes more sacrifices for who, right? And then we'll talk about it in 2 weeks.
Can do
Because
that.
because when I watch TV, the subtle images I get is that while white people and black people can work together and be friends and be equals, when it comes down to it, black people should make sacrifices and be in subservient positions. But it always looks like niceness. So no one can ever say anything, right? Like the white guy's working really hard, so his black friend stops by and brings him food, right? Well, that's actually really sweet, you know? That's a really cool thing to do. But it kind of always goes that way. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Not always. The best movie ever made, groundbreaking Lethal Weapon, where Roger Murtaugh had the family, the boat,
yes, that's
and
true.
Riggs was the
Yes,
burnout. Riggs
yes,
was the one that
that's
was
true.
looking at him like,
Yes,
wow, you have all this.
yes, that's true. I'm not sure. I'm gonna rewatch that movie because I still feel like
Oh, such a good
it,
movie.
it is a good movie. And Eric Clapton and Sandor did the music for it,
Yep.
which makes it. I didn't know that at first. It came on, and I was like, I think it was actually in the Facebook days. It came on. I was listening to it. And I was like, and I think I posted, God damn, the music in Lethal Weapon is really good. And someone said, oh, that's Eric Clapton and Sandor. I was like, holy shit, I just didn't know that. All
Yeah.
these years, I never knew that. That's some fascinating shit.
We are
Anyway,
still talking about cancel culture in some way,
we
aren't we?
are. I know. All right, so let's get back to that because that's a much more interesting conversation. I think that when it comes to this, the problem is that you can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tools, and the master's tools have always been cancel culture, right? Like white supremacy made this shit up 100 years ago, right? Like it made up this idea that you could make something up that isn't true, and as long as everybody believed it and went along with it, you could use it to run a society, right? And you could reinforce your nonsensical beliefs with whatever you wanted to. You could make up science, right? Oh, well, their skulls are shaped like this. That's why. You know what I mean? Like you could make up
Right.
science, right? You could run the newspapers and tell the newspapers to print whatever the fuck you wanted about. Well, they're part ape, so that's why we do it. You know what I mean? Like the newspapers were in it, the schools were in it, the history books were in it, the literature, everything was in on it. They made it up, right? And now their very children are taking the same tools that they've been taught. Well, then we'll make up our own shit. And we'll tell everybody that's what it is. Like, why don't we make up our own bullshit then? And will you live by our nonsensical rules? Do you know what I mean?
Are they making up bullshit though? Because the examples I see,
Oh, you're gonna get
my
me canceled. You're
what's that?
gonna get me canceled. You're
How
gonna get me
so?
because all
I'm
right.
just saying, like the status I saw that
Oh.
wrapped this up. She was dropping the N bomb in a pretty absurd way. Not that there's not an absurd way. Actually, there is, and that's I wanted to get into. But anyway, or as I said with Chris D'Elia and trying to fuck little kids, and there are. But think of the first one, Justine Sacco. Do you remember her? She's the one that tweeted, "Going to Africa. Hope I don't get AIDS." And by the time she got off the plane, she'd lost her job. Do you remember that? It's like,
Right, I do remember.
again, that was a private tweet to like her 34 friends that were following her, and someone screenshot it and sent it. And even the guy that put it on, I think, BuzzFeed, later wrote an article saying he felt bad. Like my response, get that out there. He felt bad because the cancel culture. So they aren't making things up, but sometimes they're going to absurd extremes. Um, Comparing someone that made a joke to a guy trying to fuck 16-year-old girls. I mean, it's
I
just there
mean,
seems to be no differentiation.
yeah,
Everything is a
but
10. There's no
but
gradation between
here's but
I don't approve and fuck that person.
I mean again, the minute when this country was designed, it was designed on those very same ideas, and one drop of black blood made you black. Literally
Yeah.
one drop made you black. So that was it. You know what I mean? Didn't matter. Like if somebody found out you could look like you, And if they found out, that was it. You were done. No matter, didn't matter, right? And so, they made up the rules. You know, they just don't like it when it gets turned around on them, and any little thing is grounds for for you being killed. I mean, listen, you know, they burned down whole towns because a white woman said a black guy whistled at her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, killed dozens of black men because some white woman felt uncomfortable in a black man's presence when he was just living his life. So it's like the idea of doing ridiculous things for ridiculous things. It's not like the people doing it now, as much as I don't approve of it, they didn't make it up.
No, that
They didn't make it
I
up.
hear you. I absolutely, yeah.
And this ties
Fuck.
into what I say a lot, which is, if black literature had been included, like black philosophical thought had been included in the lexicon of books people read, half of these problems could have been solved. Because Frederick Douglass said it, I think, 100 years ago, that the problem we're going to have is the problem of the color line. If we do not deal with it, it's going to something really horrible is going to happen. Basically, it's, Malcolm X, the chickens are going to come home to roost. He said
And
a
that's
lot of
where
other
we're
stuff,
at.
but they're coming home to roost. And I'm not saying it's good. It's not a good reckoning, but it's like, this is what happens when you when one large body of people decides that every single person who says, wait, this is racist, is wrong. Every black person, every Spanish, what, Latinx now, what's the PC
It,
term so I don't get
I have
canceled?
no idea.
Right? Like
I am
every
too white, too old, and too
right,
stupid to keep
right.
up with
But like
everything.
every Indian person, every
And it's
Asian
all good.
person,
Let people
right?
do it, but don't get mad at me for forgetting occasionally.
Right,
Like you
right,
just said,
right,
like
exactly. Right. I
what
don't
is this
mean to
called
be,
again?
I don't mean to be rude. It's hard to keep up,
Right.
right? But like when every single person of every race who isn't white has said, "Hey, wow, wait, there's some racist shit going on here," what people are saying is no. Every single person who said that is wrong. We're not racist because we've decided we're not racist.
Yeah.
We've we've haven't we haven't done any work about it. We haven't researched it. We haven't asked and had really honest conversations about how we feel. We've done zero work on it. But because somebody passed a couple of laws, we're now not racist. Ta-da! It's like, okay. That being said, things have gotten a lot better. You know what I mean? Right? Like things have gotten better. They really have. Like, accepted, but what we're talking about, I think we're now at a place where we're good and evil. So we believe people are irredeemable, which gets back to cancel culture, right? See, came all the way back. Man, I'm proud of
Beautiful.
us.
Well done.
But I heard a story about some woman, a young black woman who has a thing where she exposes racist or something. And I guess she said this kid is about to be a freshman, and here's something he posted. And it was something like, guacamole, nigga, penis, right? Those three words. And she said, she basically, I guess they call it doxed him, where she basically put all his
Yeah.
phone number,
You put the
his
phone number, the address, you
address,
yeah.
where he. So I was like, holy shit, they did that. And then I heard, when they meant freshman in high school. I was like, so, and then the tweet that he did was like
How old is a
56
freshman in
months
high
now.
school?
Well, the tweet was 56 months before that. So
Oh,
he was like 12. So when he was 12 years old, he wrote guacamole nigga penis, and I was like, okay, that's absurd. Because that's somehow like they're like, I want to expose these little racists while they're young so we know who they are when they grow. I'm like, my God, you're acting like a 12-year-old can't somehow mature. And my God, if I had Twitter when I was 12, can you imagine?
if I had
Holy
one,
shit.
first of all, Twitter's going to get me in trouble today. But if I had it in my 20s, much less when I was 12, I mean,
Right.
what do scientists say? And if the frontal cortex, or it's not fully formed until you're in your 20s. I
I mean,
remember.
right? You don't even have critical thinking skills until puberty. Jesus Christ! Like,
Right.
what?
I mean, you're
What
just,
that's absurd.
and just defending boys, because that's what I am. So I'm not going to talk about women because I'm not an expert and I have no place to. But boys are all the way through their 20s dumb, aggressive, horny, and people try and say that as a cop out, like, oh, whatever. Thinking with your dick is a real thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not using it as a blanket excuse for any behavior, but I'm saying we're stupid and we are just driven by emotions that we don't understand. And everybody thinks you're an adult in your 20s, but you're not. I didn't start to get my shit together till my 30s. And now I look back and I'm like, I'm barely an adult now. But I
Right.
get it. It's so to hold a 12 or a 15-year-old, and there can be 12 and 15-year-olds that say hateful things. I always talk about my stupid high school classmates a lot, and there was absolute racism, and they should have known better. But is, getting back to cancel culture, the way to get someone to know better, to dox them, to say this is the address, go fucking throw shit
I
at their house,
mean,
burn their house down,
right.
call them at
I
5 a.m.,
mean,
do whatever? Like,
yeah,
is that how you bring about change? Or is, as you
right,
say, it's just dividing? Because
right.
once,
Is that how you turn a kid into a racist?
right, once you
You know,
label someone racist, like someone says I'm a racist, what's my defense? Everything sounds stupid. Everything. Well, I have black friends. Oh, um, I've written about experience. Oh, like I do a podcast with a friend, and we, oh, like, once you are labeled a racist, there is no defense other than to say, all right, that's what you say,
well,
so fuck you and go live your life, or become
here's
angry.
here's what you could say. You could say, you may be right. I grew up in a system that taught me to believe certain things about myself and believe certain things about you, just like you believe certain things about yourself and believe certain things about me. And I'm doing everything I can to undo the bad stuff and magnify the good stuff. And you just say it like that. And that's just the truth, right?
Yeah.
You're just saying, listen, I may have some preconceived notions and I work every day to not let those things rule my life. And just there it is, right? Because we all have preconceived notions. Do you know what I mean? We do. And race plays a huge amount into it. It really does.
And this brings us to something I said, the two friends, and this goes to whatever
Ah,
you said that
good
made me think
memory.
of it.
Nice. Well done.
Um, I don't remember what you said that made me think of it. Black people going to a restaurant, and because the security officer, that I can't eat my egg, whatever.
You
And
sound so
perception.
you sound so mean. It just takes me back to like high school. Like,
Okay, first of all, fuck you for eating at McDonald's anyway. I mean, you shouldn't be eating there to begin with. So you got a favor, because the shit that did to your liver, that when you eat. So anyway, um, I'm gonna speak broadly here, because I'm gonna talk about a couple of friends of mine, and I don't want to
yes.
get in trouble, as if they even listen to me, or anything I do or my podcast. But two friends, both in interracial situations. My friends are hunky American males, and then they have in their life non-hunky America, non-cracker ass. So one of them constantly posting on Facebook about how his family is viewed and that person's racist. And, I went to the grocery store and they were looking at me and my family and judging me and blah, blah, blah. And I talked to my other friend about it. I said, hey, you're in a similar situation as a crybaby over here. What's your experience? And he looked at me and said, I've never had anyone look at me like that way or treat me that way. And so one guy is playing the victim. Now, it could just be different. Like, maybe my one friend is completely oblivious and people are staring at him and his family all the time and judging them and being
Right.
racist, and he just doesn't
Give a
notice.
shit. Yeah.
Or maybe the other way, knowing them both, he's not, and the other one is a little inventive. But where is the blur between, how much is, you and I have said it before, there's a greater chance someone's just an asshole than an out and out racist. Now they could have unconscious bias and or going back to Cooper, where she voted for Obama, donated to Democrats, but her first response was call the police. There's a black guy. I mean, it's not like you say walking around dropping the N-bomb racist, but it could be out there. Who knows? Like one guy could be oblivious. I don't think he is. The other could be completely inventing. I think he's inventing a lot or perceiving a lot. I don't know. Do you take everything with a grain of salt at some point? Or do you
Well,
just
I
live
mean,
life and try and do the best you can? Like you say, every day I will try and overcome my biases and I
yeah,
will forgive other people theirs.
yeah. I mean, right. I have to do that a lot. I'll tell you another sexism story in a minute. I think when I heard about the woman
Did you say sexy or sexism?
sexism.
Sexist? Sexy? Spinal
Yeah.
tap. Everything's a reference to me. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
I think it's very
Uh,
sexy. And I can't do an accent. I do horrible accents. I'm shitty at accents.
it's not bad. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's fucking an American's shitty version of whatever maybe British is. I have no clue what it is either.
when when I saw the security guard have her experience, I was like, God, that happens to me all the time. Like I come home late from a gig, I'm starving. I'm like, fuck, the only thing open is fucking Taco Bell or McDonald's or Burger King or White Castle. So I pull in, I get something, and they say, okay, pull over there and wait a few minutes. I'm like, oh, God damn it. I just assume it's late and they have to make my food.
Yeah.
Literally, that's all I assume. I never assume that they're being, and I was like, but that's the thing. That's what, that's what it feels like to be a black person sometimes. Like, you don't know. Right, you're perfect. It's true. Like, I can walk into a place and something that appears to be racist could just be an asshole. But it's weird the weight of just not knowing is with the frequency with which I have to wonder is what it is.
So I guess then to go back to my two friends, apologies for interrupting.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to wonder? Or could that be something you, I don't want to say let go, like, let go of racism. Come on, live your life. Or could it be something that I'm just going to give every person the benefit of the doubt and hope for the best?
Well, all right. If I am going to be perfectly honest, I suppose,
Yeah,
right?
go ahead, because this is white guy asking. So I know
Yeah.
that I'm coming from a point of
Here's the
view that
thing.
has no place to speak. So,
White supremacy, it doesn't just make white people think they're better, it makes black people think they're worse. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like the same images have a very opposite effect on the other people, on the other, right? The creation of the other, right? And so when I walk into a place and something happens, the kind of mental gymnastics that I go through in those moments. Now that could be my unique experience. I don't speak for all black people, but
Wait, why are we doing
right,
this then?
exactly, right.
I
Um,
do speak for all white people.
right.
Actually, I
Well,
consider myself more a white person spy. I'll tell you what white
no,
people are thinking so that we can, I don't know.
exactly. But you know, like that's the thing. I think that racism, the way that racism affects black people or white supremacy affects black people, is it teaches us how to self-sabotage. It teaches us to put limits on ourselves, right? Like if you like the power of racism is like the power to define things, right? And if you can define the thing and then the thing will accept the definition of your definition, that's real power. You know what I mean? And if people
Yeah.
defined what black people's limits were, and then for years black people kind of like this is like everything allows for that. You know what I mean? Like everything subconsciously and consciously does that. I have liberal friends who, when I start to do well in life, they say negative things to me. When I start to say something where I assert a little authority, the kind of threat that it poses is somehow greater than when I see my white friends do the same thing to them, right? No, not all, but then,
I was just going to suggest, because that's a comedian trait too, is you see
mhm,
someone, an artistic person in your world do better than you, and your
right,
first thought is, fuck,
right.
why not
And
me?
and here's the thing. Did you say this when when everybody's racist when they're driving?
Yeah. But I think a lot of people have said it. It's not
Right.
an original thought, but I've
Here's
said it
but
for a million years.
but here's the thing. It's not that everybody's racist when they're driving. Everybody's everything when they're driving.
Everybody's equal.
Well, right, but if you see a woman, you won't call her, oh, that asshole woman. You'll call her some other derogatory name that would make a woman go,
Right.
"What the fuck did you just call me?"
Yeah.
And then you see a black person, you see an Asian person, whatever it is, like that's what you say. And not everybody does that, obviously, but it's not. It's like all that stuff comes out. It's not just one thing. So I think the funny thing is that we're just fucked up creatures, right? And when it comes to race, we'll say, well, I don't like you because you're black, and I don't like you because you're a woman. I don't like you because you're taller than me. I don't like you because you're shorter than me. I don't, right? Like, we don't like anybody, it seems.
I
Do you know
got
what I mean?
really,
Like,
yeah, when I
in a
lived in
weird
Los
way, you
Angeles,
know?
I got frustrated because I asked, I'm like, so why is every actor short? They're like, why is, Tom Cruise is 5'4", Ben Stiller's five, everyone's tiny, Mel Gibson, everyone is small. And I was asking them, like, why is that? And they're like, eye lines. Like, what do you mean? It's like, well, you don't want one person like looking, you want to imagine like, okay, so why are you hiring 5'4" women? Like, why don't you hire Nor? But every actor and actress is short. I'm like, and I couldn't get it. I'm getting frustrated. I'm like, I'm 6'2". Are you saying I'm automatically disqualified? It was like, you're heightists is what you are. All I kept saying was eye lines. I'm like, and it made me think of the movie Tom Cruise. He the side the pre-crime unit,
Minority Report.
Minority Report. Max von Sydow is 6'4" or 6'6", was, and there's an end scene toward the end of the movie where they're staring just eye to eye, and I'm like, oh man, did Max have to crouch down, or did they get an apple box? Because like you had 5'4" and 6'4". I mean, they were just right on. Anyway, so when you
That's
said
hilarious.
short people hate, that was where my mind went. Was I have been angry at shorter people due to my
Well,
height.
here's the funny thing. I don't know if what I just said is true. I do think it's funny that Tom Cruise was standing on an apple crate. That's some funny shit. Just the visual, like, yeah,
He's Tom
I,
Cruise. He probably could have made Max Von. You got to crouch. I'm not standing on it. You got to
right.
crouch.
But it's just funny that what either way you see the camera and I can just see it panning out to
Yeah.
show what it really is in real life. It's just funny,
You ever
Just
see? You can Google you can Google like pictures of actors that's like Sylvester Stallone or Robert De Niro, shots on set of them in lifts where they show like shoes that have like women's
yeah,
70s platform shoes, or like the band Kiss, where
yeah,
because they need to be taller for a scene. But
yeah.
yeah, it's insane. Everyone in Hollywood is diminutive.
That's hilarious.
It just shows you what a good actor Liam Neeson is, because he's tall and he broke through.
Yeah, but that gives me hope. So,
So we're weird creatures. Our timers. Let me just quick check. Yeah, we got a little time left. I just want to make sure that we wrap up cancel culture.
yeah. Well,
Uh,
here's the thing. If what I said is true and people just were naturally hateful creatures, right? Because here's the thing, right? I don't yell and scream a whole lot in my car these days at people, largely because I've I won't say did a whole lot of work on myself. That just sounds ridiculous, right? But I realized ways in which my ego was legitimately fucking up my life. Like my my ego, the because sometimes playing the victim is an ego game, right? Like the victim has a lot of power somehow, right? Like as the victim, I'm allowed to interrupt you and tell you how much you hurt me. And there's a lot of power in being a victim sometimes, you know?
yeah,
And then sometimes things were really legitimate and I needed to say something, right? Sometimes I was a victim, right? And sometimes I played the victim. And those instances in which I played the victim, that's just my ego trying to protect me from some part of myself I didn't want to deal with, you know? And the more I deal with the parts of myself that I don't want to deal with, the more I have an understanding that everybody has their own journey. And so if I go somewhere and someone responds to me in some way that I used to respond to people, I'm like, oh, right, that's just because they haven't dealt with this, or they're having a bad day. And I won't make excuses for them, but I'll definitely allow for their humanity. You know, like I don't think we're born good. We have this illusion that we're born good and that we get bad over time. And I think we're not born good. We're born very neutral. We're actually born really selfish and egotistical. And babies are amazing, but they're also awful, egotistical crying machines,
Well,
And
not just
everybody knows that, you know what I mean?
babies, but kids. I'm not going
Right.
to say who
Like,
it was, read a book from someone who said that I'm just going to start embracing my inner child. I remember I used to go around trying to please everybody and please my boyfriends and please, like, and I decided, when a child wants something, they just do it because I'm like, yeah, that's cute and it makes for a neat sort of like shitty philosophy. But when I tell my son, no, you can't play Nintendo, he throws a goddamn fit and he
right.
has to be taught. Sometimes you hear no. And yeah, so the idea of saying that people are born good, I think they're born good, but they are born selfish. Like
Yeah.
I'm not saying you beat it out of them like you will never play Nintendo, but there is a learning curve. And I like what you're saying is just when someone you interact with interacts in a way that you don't approve of, you just like try and understand that's where they are on their learning curve. Is that
Yeah.
paraphrasing it okay?
Yeah. Right. Like we set up these false competitions, right? Like I'll see another. Like I had this thought, and here's the fucked up part of it. Like Sarah Silverman said it. She said that like being a woman is like being an espresso machine. Like if there's a writing group and someone says, "Are there any women there?" Like, "Oh yeah, we have one." And there might be like 10 guys, but one
Right.
woman. And it's true. Like I was looking through something when when Katie was up for we were up. She was up for Blues
Barrett's
Clues.
the musical director for the Katie Henry Band, for anybody that doesn't know.
Yeah, katiehenrymusic.com. Um, she was up for best new female artist, right? And so the way you have to vote is you have to like vote. They like make you vote for everybody once you're in, unless you're the people you want in the very first category. You want to hit skip 50 more times. You know what I mean? If I can
Yeah.
vote for all the artists, right? So I was like, all right, let me be real about this, right? Let me listen to some of this stuff. So one of the dudes was a black dude with dreadlocks, right? And I was like, oh no. Like my immediate thought was, oh no, they've already got one.
They've
You know
got
what I
me.
mean?
Yeah.
Right. I was like, what am I gonna do? I was like,
My Joe, I almost said,
right,
was it you?
right,
Were you the black
exactly.
guy with dreadlocks?
Right. But like literally my first thought was they've already got one. I guess I should do something else. And then I went, that's fucking ridiculous. I'm not a fucking espresso machine. Thank you, Sarah Silverman. Right? Thank you for the because I'm like, I'm not a fucking espresso machine. Like I refuse to believe that I can't live in a world in which there's more than one black dude with dreadlocks who plays blues rock. I refuse to believe that there can't be more than one. Do you know what I mean? Like that would be ridiculous, right? And
Yeah.
that's the thing. But that's what racism and sexism, that's what it does, right? You
Puts
don't
you in the
have
box
to,
and says you cannot be what you
right,
want to be.
right. Part of it is people will say, I've already got one, right? But the other part of it is that the people who already see one there won't try out for that position
Right.
because they believe. Now, that's the stuff that I have to deal with in myself, right? That's my own, like, unlearning of things that I've been taught, right? That's my own thing, right? I can't change whether or not people are going to say, we've already got a black dude with dreadlocks. We don't need another one, right? What's this world coming to? My God, right? Like, I can't do anything about that's hard, right? I can't do anything about that,
That's our timer.
but I can do something about my, like, I can stop accepting other people's definition of black, right? My definition of the world that I want to envision involves a place where there can be many people who look like me playing blues rock and nobody thinks anything of it. Like, that's the world I want to live in, you know? And so that's the world I have to live into that world by treating the world like it is that, and doing what I do and meeting this guy and not seeing him as my competition, and maybe saying, "Hey, let's write a tune together." Do you know what I mean? Let's
Yeah.
collaborate. Let's be friends, right? Like, we don't have to.
Let's
We
team
don't.
up.
Right. We don't have to fight each other. We can work together. And I
Let's be
think that's
Milli
what.
Vanilli.
Right. And I think women are trying to do that more. Instead of walking into an office and seeing each other as competition, see each other as allies. You know, like in STEM programs and stuff, they're starting to like,
I don't know that they're starting. I think they've been doing. I think the best thing I heard was, I think, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They said, how many women are on the Supreme Court, or what will it take to make you happy? And she said, there won't be enough women on the Supreme Court until there are 9 women on the Supreme Court. And I went, there you go. Like, I liked that one. Not the I got. This is too far to get into, but not like the Clarence Thomas, which is, I got mine, I'm here, fuck the rest of you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about him to talk about him. And good, I just, what I know about him is he's a fucking douchebag.
Yeah, well, that's his. I've read that. Well, let's start doing
Yeah,
wrap up plugs. So, did we
yeah.
solve cancel culture? We
All
brought it
right.
on ourselves. What can we do about it? So,
Here's
was
what
I a
I
good
think.
person or a bad person for not outing this racist?
I think that you did the reasonable thing in not doing it. What I would love to
I
see is,
wanted
instead of
to.
people trying to cancel people, I'd love to see them try to have an honest dialogue, even though I know trying to do that on Facebook is ridiculous, right?
Yeah,
I'm aware of what I'm saying. But here's what I would love.
be
I would
fast.
I would love for us to not think people are irredeemable.
Yeah,
Because as long as you think people are evil, then the only way to beat them is to destroy them.
and
Do you know
that's
what I mean?
why
Like, and we
I have
can't
people
destroy
asking
each
me.
other.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Go continue. Yeah,
No,
finish.
no, no,
I was just, I
no.
have people asking me why I still have and I say it on here all the time. They don't listen. My stupid high school friends on, because it's like, I will hammer them. I have like, you've done this your whole life and you see the results. Ever feel like taking the blinders off? And I'll just keep asking, because when we don't talk politics or other things, they're good people. They just
Right.
have flaws like all of us. All
I
right,
mean, I think that's the problem, is that the people, everybody's suffering, and people are genuinely good. And
and it's
people do
we try and
they believe that they're doing the right thing. Like, all the right wing nut jobs that I think are cuckoo really believe they're doing the right thing. They believe that their way is going to solve this country's problems, right?
anyway.
Like, yeah, there you go. Well, I hope we solve something.
Maybe.
Um,
We can solve the COVID crisis for one of us, or at least hopefully one of us, maybe both. Very quickly, you as a musician have been giving bass lessons. You can do Zoom
oh,
bass lessons. So I'm going to throw up
I can.
antargoodwin.com. Anybody
Absolutely.
seeing this worldwide, if you are in England or Pakistan or Japan and you want to
Hmm.
take bass lessons, antargoodwin.com. Reach out.
Absolutely.
You've got a bunch of students. You still got space, because you've
Yeah.
been busy all day, every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
COVID. It's funny because when we were touring, I wasn't teaching at all, and then the minute I got off the road,
Yeah.
that I
Now you
started
can
picking
start
up
teaching
students. I
again.
was like, "Oh,
So,
this is great!" But it was nice that I was able to pick up a handful of students. I was like, "Oh, that was nice."
and
It worked
if
out well.
anybody is interested in taking bass lessons, antargoodwin.com. And
Yes.
if you have any interest in who I am as a person, I like to write books. You can look up Nathan Timmel on Amazon, and I'll just throw up a graphic of the first one I wrote about my life. I was a white knight once, and that will explain why I'm fucked in the head and think the way I do.
It does indeed. It's true.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good insight. You're pretty
So,
honest in that one.
and it helps me get a couple bucks during COVID when I'm not touring.
Exactly.
I just got an email this morning that my only gig in July, the other one's all canceled, and my last July gig is on the fence. So, might have a gig in October.
Yeah.
All right.
Good luck.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this, share, share, share. Tell your friends to watch and listen, or if you just put it in another tab and listen. Whatever you do, share it and say nice things about us. And thanks for tuning in. And next
Indeed.
week we will try and solve racism again.
Yeah. See ya.